Okay, so we said 11 years old, controlling dreams. Um, from there, things started to get a lot better for me. That is pretty much the point where I finally started to fight what I will call, for the sake of this story, um, the darkness that was around me. And I'm starting to kind of understand it. I'm praying to God, and God, for the this from 11 years old. This is the point. He'd been talking to me before, but I was young and I didn't understand and I was confused. This is the point where he's talking to me and I hear him. I understand. I'm getting answers. I'm getting direction. I'm getting guidance internally. I'm from him through me. And I'm getting direction. And this is where I start to defeat my demons and fight my demons and all of that. But this would be a long battle. So the very next incident, I was in the streets or whatever, and projects, and got into fights and all that stuff. So there's a lot of negative things around me. Um, I start getting to the point where, um, in the environment I was in, it was the worst projects for its time in the entire United States, and it was so bad that they had to build police stations inside of the projects. Not just build police stations, mobile police stations, but they took over vacant apartments and set up shop inside some of the vacant apartments. Like, we had at least three mobile stations and two apartments that we identified, because crooks, and as being undercover cops in one set of projects, right? Now, this is part of the problem that everybody's angry about. They talk about that, people don't see is you will never find that same setup in the suburbs. You'll never find that in the suburbs. What do you find in the suburbs in an apartment complex? You might find a fire station. You might find a school. You might find a park. You might find a Salvation Army. You might find all kinds of cool things inside of a subdivision in the suburbs, but you won't find these police stations that are just built up everywhere with these cops everywhere. You won't find that. You find opportunities, not restrictions, not law, not but you get that in the projects because of the environments that we are put into, the cages that we're put into, because of the systematic oppression that is occurring there. And that's why people are angry now. And that's what I had to grow up in at this point in time. So naturally, from my background already that we've talked about so far, now I'm in an environment where all of that, you got to be tough and you can't cry. And now that's coming to use, because now I'm getting into fights. Now I'm around stuff. Now I'm seeing stuff, right? And I was able to take care of myself, and I was able to defend myself. I did well. People knew who I was. I was okay. I was good, right? But part of that is, in order to survive and in order to be strong and in order to be able to fend off my brothers and sisters that are put against me in this situation, we're put against each other. In order to do that, you have to be surrounded by it, by the negative energy, by the ignorance, by the anger, by all of that stuff. And again, just like that earlier situation, if we're light energy and you put me in a situation that is considered toxic, where it's just negative energy in there, just like a prison, it works the same way. You put these people that already have negative energy in them all in a cage together, and all they have to spread to each other is more negative energy. It's not a rehabilitation process, it's an imprisonment process. It's not, oh, you had a bad childhood and your dad left, or your mom was a crackhead, or the government did not provide you with the same opportunities that we provided to the suburbs, or the schools did not get enough funding in your area the way that the schools did in these other areas. It's all of those things. And then you have a situation where a young black kid or Hispanic kid is seeing that this system does not work for him. He doesn't have the education to come up in it. He doesn't have the knowledge to get through it. But what does he know? What has been put in front of him? Drugs and money and gangs. And that becomes the only life. I'm speaking from being there, from seeing it. That becomes the only life you see. That becomes the only way out that you know. I was always anti-gangs, right? I'm anti anything that puts up a banner, because if you say Blue Lives Matter, you just created a wall, a team. This is my tribe. This is my people. If you say Black Lives Matter, this is my tribe. This is my people. And what that does is that causes an outward effect where other people now are like, oh yeah, that's your tribe? Well, this is my tribe. And that's where you get Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, and all these different things that everybody's me too, me too, me too, right? Because we're all from different tribes. But if you could see yourself as brothers and sisters, we'd be one tribe. We don't get that in the streets. We don't get that privilege. We don't get that opportunity. So me, who was this good kid, who had a good head on his shoulders as far as everybody can tell, who nobody knew what I was going through, who in school the whole time I was excelling. I hit top percentile on my state exam or whatever it was in the 3rd grade. I was in a class for gifted children in 4th grade. I graduated high school a year early. Everything looked like it was on the ups. You know what I mean? Everything looked good because I kept pushing myself at the beginning because of my parents. And then when my sister passed, I started pushing myself for her to do as she would have wanted me to do. But right before she passed, I was getting drawn to that life because I was living in it. So much so that there was this guy that handed me a gun, some other stuff I won't talk about, and some cash and some things. And I was young. I was a kid. I didn't know better, but I should have known better. I took it and I hid it for them, right? And that's where I started to, at that age, that was the first time I held a gun. And to me, with everything I was going through, that was the first time I felt what I thought in my ignorance, what I thought was real power. And it felt good. It felt good that I just have this thing that I can hold on to that is power. This thing that I could, no matter what gets thrown at me in that environment, in that jungle that I was living in, I have a chance. I have a chance to survive. I have a chance to make it because I have power in my head, right? It becomes attractive. Even to a kid like me who didn't start out that way. It becomes attractive. And then the money, that's an opportunity. That's a way out of this mess. So if I can get the guns and I can get the money, I can get out. So I start heading down this path. Now, in between there, I get into another incident. Now I'm about 11, 12 years old. My mom is back in my face again. And I'm actually in my room, and she's doing the exact same thing that she did that one time. And she's in my face, and she just won't let me be. I told her I got it, whatever, I'm sorry, punch me, whatever it was. I don't even know what the argument was. I don't even know if I was wrong or right. I don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the same situation occurred, and I'm in my room, and I'm trying to get her out, and she won't go. So then I try to leave myself. I try to walk around her and exit the room and exit the apartment and just leave. Just walk away so I can cool off. She blocks the doorway and gets in front of me because she wasn't done unleashing her anger. And this time what happened was all I hear is my mother going off, and then I see her get slapped and fall over. And when I turned to look to figure out what happened, she looked at me with fear. And I still wasn't I was, what the hell? And I had took me a minute to process that was my hand that went up, because it happened so quick that I didn't even get the chance this time to stop myself. I didn't see it. I felt the anger. I didn't feel, I was going to hit her. I wasn't sitting there thinking, I want to hit you. I wasn't sitting there thinking, I want to slap you. I wasn't sitting there thinking, I was like, please let me go. That's the only thing I remember on my mind is, please let me leave. Please let me leave. Something bad is coming. Please let me leave. And she would not let me leave. And in no way am I condoning my actions at all. I'm not making excuses for it. I own it to the day I die. That is my guilt. I have to walk in that. That is my shame. But I promise you that I had absolutely zero control over that arm. Zero control. And this would go on to manifest as I would get into fights and black out. I'd be in the middle of a fight. I remember how it started. I remember kind of the end. I don't remember anything in the middle. And I would have to be told, this is as a kid, I would have to be told by other people what happened during that fight. Me doing things I didn't even know I could do. I didn't even know I was like, I didn't have training, formal training in fighting. I learned as I went. And I was doing things I didn't know I could do, according to what they told me. But I couldn't remember them. Because this is the level of corruption that was inside of me. This is the level of corruption that I allowed to grow. This is the level of negative energy that I chose. So regardless of the outward stuff that was around me, I still made that choice. Now, I'm not trying to defend anything with me. I'm simply explaining at that time why I made the choices I made, why I allowed the corruption to grow, and how I processed everything. There was an outward effect and there was an inward effect. I'm ultimately responsible because ultimately I made the choice. I didn't make the choice to slap my mother. I promise you I did not. But I made the choice to allow the anger, to allow the rage, to allow whatever it was to take over me the way that it did. To the point where I no longer had free will. Because I promise you it was never my will to strike my mother. Never. And from that day, I had to double down on attacking my anger. That is where that began. Because never again could I let that happen. Never could I let that. I wasn't raised that way. I was taught better. It was all females that raised me. Was not raised that way. But yet, I did it. I gave away my free will. I gave it to my anger. I chose anger. And then I let it take control of me, so I had no control over it. So fast forward from there, I apologize. Me and my mom make up, all that stuff. I try to explain to her, and I would look it up later in the future, and I would find out that this is an actual condition. This is a real thing. But at that time, again, this is back in the day. That information wasn't out there. We didn't have the internet. I didn't have the resources, and no one's talking to me. No one's telling me anything. I'm learning on my own. So moving forward, my sister ends up getting shot. Before trying to make sure I'm following the timeline. I'll go back a week before my sister gets shot. Around that time frame, I was 12 going on 13. She was 15 going on 16. And because of that difference, because of the puberty and the changes, boy, girl, all that stuff, my sister, who was my full-blooded sister, who was the closest person in the world to me, who was the person who taught me, she was the only person along the way that I had in my corner that I could talk to that would not tell me I was crazy, that I could talk to that would not shun me away or dismiss me. But I still couldn't talk to her about what was going on inside of me because she was afraid of anything spiritual. She was traumatized from the experiences at the haunted house that she did not want to talk about them ever until that day that she did. She would not speak of them. She would not. So throughout those years, she was my one person that saw me and understood me and guided me and taught me and helped me. And when I did when I did wrong, she made me do right, And she's only 2 years older than me, but she was everything. She led me. And we get to this point where we're fighting. We're fighting every day. We're at each other's throats. We're truly brothers and sisters at this point. You know what I mean? We're like, I can't stand you. I can't stand you more. You know what I mean? Like, you're adopted. You were found at a dumpster. Like, we're just going at it, right? No, I loves you. No, I miss you or anything like that. It was going on for a good while. Well, probably well over a year. So this lady pops in. This lady lives upstairs. And actually, it's a little more than a week before, maybe a month or 2 months or something like that. I can't remember. My mother would know better. But there's this lady who lives upstairs that is this little old lady that people talk about, but nobody really knows. And it's said that she is like, in Spanish, we would say bruja. She's a witch, right? But, or some Christians would say she's a spiritual person. And she's anointed or whatever. But she comes downstairs to our floor, and our door, we're in the projects. Our door is always locked, deadbolt. Right? Deadbolt, always locked. On this particular day, I don't know how, but like 5 minutes before, somebody went in and out or something, and the door was left open, just in this small window of time. This lady did not knock. She turned the knob. She walked right in the house. Never been in this apartment before. We never seen her face to face. She goes straight past the kitchen, straight past the living room, straight past my room where my door was open and I was in the room, but my back was turned away, and straight towards the very back of the apartments. At the back of the apartments, there's 2 bedrooms that are split side by side. One is my mother's and one is my sister's. She went straight back. My mother's in her room. I'm in my room. She made a beeline straight to my sister's room. She goes up to my sister. She grabs her. She starts kissing her, holding her, and she's saying something in Spanish or something like that. I was in my room. I didn't hear any. I didn't know any of this was happening, right? When I find out is when I hear my mother screaming. And my mother's yelling at someone, and she's like fighting in the hallway. So I'm like, what's going on? Because it was only me, my sister, and my mother there. So I go to look, and it's this very old lady, very fragile old lady. Even looked fragile. I'm not going to say she is, but very old lady. And my mom is not hitting her because she's older, but she's yelling at her to get out the house, and she's kicking her out and all this other stuff. And so then we all get to talking to try and figure out what the hell just happened, and that's how we piece together the story. And my mom and my sister know what was said, but my mom didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to really talk about what was said. All I got out of it was that it was something to do with my sister's sacrifice, or something important that my sister was going to do, or something huge. That's all I knew. So this, fast forward now, we're fighting, we're all this stuff, right? I wake up on the day my sister died. I wake up. I go to use the bathroom. One of the things we would fight about at that time was my sister was beautiful and she had to be a model all the damn time, right? So if I didn't wake up 5 minutes before her, because I'm a boy, I don't care about my hair. I didn't have pretty hair. I get ready the night before I wake up. I throw myself. I got to just brush my teeth, use the bathroom, and go. It literally takes me 5-10 minutes tops to get ready. That's all I need, 5-10 minutes. But if she gets in there before me, and it takes her an hour to get ready, which it does, right? I now have to wait that entire hour for her to be done for me to go in and use the bathroom, which would upset me, because I'm like, look, we both know I'm faster. Let me do my thing, and you go do your thing. So we would fight about this all the damn time, because she didn't care. She was like, nope, doing my hair. You snooze, you lose. Typical kid stuff, right? So we're fighting. I get up. I go towards the bathroom. She beat me to it. Here I go. I'm just ready to tell her off. I just woke up, and right out my mouth, I'm ready to talk shit. I'm like, I go to open my mouth, and I just remember something negative that I wanted to say to her. Like, oh, here you go again. You're so ugly. Why you gotta be in the mirror all the time? Something like that. Something childish. And I open my mouth to say it, and I literally hear this voice in my head. And it's not my voice, it's different. It's like a whisper. But this whisper was loud this time. It was loud because this is the same. Throughout these years, I've been experiencing this, right? But this is the loudest I ever heard it. And it was so much so that I'm going here to let this out my mouth, and I stopped almost, the way someone interrupts you when you're going to talk. I stopped and I looked to my right. I looked to my right and I'm like, what? No, there's no one there. But I look to my right as if I'm having a conversation, and I'm like, no, what? Because that's how loud the voice was. It says, no, don't do that. Tell her you love her. That's what the voice says to me. And I'm like, what? Like, why? Because I'm an angry little kid. We're fighting. I'm not telling her that. So I dismiss it. And I go for a second time to go tell her whatever crappy stuff I was going to tell her. And it, again, calls at me so loud that I'm like, what? And it's repeating itself. Tell her that you love her. Tell her that you love her. So I say, okay. I go into the bathroom and I say, you look pretty. I love you. She says, I love you too. Thank you. All right. Do my thin real quick. She does her thin. Have a good day. You too. She smiled. First time we had that kind of exchange in a long time, right? At that point. So she goes on about her day. She's in high school, so she has a different schedule than me. They get out early, right? And I'm in intermediate or whatever it is. And my schedule is still at that point to get out at like 3. So I'm in class, and this class has windows. It's like a second floor or something, and you can look out the window, and my desk is right by the window. It's about 1 o'clock somewhere in the afternoon. This is before pagers. This is before cell phones, right? And that voice pops up again. And it's really loud. And it's telling me to call her. It's saying, call your sister. Call your sister. And I'm arguing with the voice because I go, okay, I understood that what you did earlier was good and it worked out good and I want to listen to the voice. But the problem I'm facing is that I'm in the middle of class and I can't explain to the teacher that a voice is telling me to go down to the lobby to make a phone call, because that's what I would have had to do, to go to the office to make that phone call at that time. So it's nagging me, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it, but how do I do it? How do I call her? She doesn't have a cell phone. She doesn't have a pager. She should be, at that point in time, from what I knew of her schedule, she should be in transit, leaving school through the train station to get to either home or to her boyfriend's house, which at the time that's what she would do after school. So I'm thinking to myself, because this is real and I want to listen to it, and it worked this morning. And so I'm like, okay, but how do I call her? All right, well, get down to the office and get to the phone. But then where do I go from there? If she's not home, then I got no number to call. I don't have anything with her. She's in the train. She can't get reception anyway with anything in there. And we didn't have anything. So I'm like, what do I don't even know where she was going. So I just dismissed it because I couldn't figure out. I did try. I did think to myself, how can I make that happen? But at that time, with the technology and everything that was going on, I didn't have an easy way to do it. So I just couldn't figure it out. So I left it alone, and it kept nagging me, and it kept nagging me, and it kept nagging me. And 3 o'clock came, and it was still nagging me. It was like, you need to call, you need to contact her or whatever. But again, so then I think I tried to figure out a way. I went home and I asked about her, or I asked if anybody about her, because it was like that much on my mind. Nothing. I put my books up. I come back downstairs to the middle of the projects. I hang out. I'm sitting on the bench. This guy comes up, this tall white dude, dressed in... He was undercover. They had a look. Dressed in detective clothes. They had a look. You could tell. So he comes through, and he makes eye contact with me. This is a guy I never met before. He makes eye contact with me, and he almost pauses when he does, and he looks at me as if he wants to say something to me, as if like he's gonna grab me. And at this point, I'm thinking us against them, because that's how I was. That's what my environment, us against them, and us was the Black and Hispanic and community that I was now allowed into, because I fought my way into. Because when I first got there, they saw me as a white guy. This is from a mulatto kid that was black, that was lighter skinned than me, calling me white, right? Then when I fought my way into it and I proved myself, I was black. I was not allowed to be Hispanic. I was black. I was only Hispanic when it came to food. Other than that, I was white or I was black, according to them, right? And it's just like the typical, the stereotypical white guy or Asian guy, the one guy that's in the projects and stuff. We had that. The white guy wasn't white either. He was an Oreo. He was black inside. You one of us. You got your black card. That's how it was, right? So us against them, because we weren't all brothers and sisters. It was us against them. And So when I saw the detective, I'm already getting defensive. I'm like, I wasn't thinking anything of what was to come. I was getting defensive. I'm literally, I didn't even do anything wrong. I literally was in school, I had no crime, and my reaction was to get ready to run from this guy or fight him. That was my reaction. I was thinking about, do I run or do I fight? That's what was going through my head, because us against them. So he goes upstairs into the building, disappears. I don't know where he's going. He's going to the building. About not even 5 minutes go by, and my younger sister comes down hysterical. I can't even make sense of what she's saying. And I'm around my guys, my crew, whatever, at the time, and everybody. So everybody, we all know each other, and so everybody stops and like, well, what's going on? She's a baby for us at the time, and she's just hysterical. Something about, all I could make out was Jeannie and the detective. That's all I could make out. And so I'm like, Jeannie get arrested? Did something happen to her? Did something happen to my sister or whatever? And she get arrested? So I go upstairs and I find my mother hysterical and everybody else that's in there hysterical, and the chaos, and the same guy that looked at me on the bench. And he looks at me again, and I look at him, and he's like, huh. Apparently he didn't recognize me. I don't know why he looked at me that way. Because in that moment I was thinking, oh, is that why you looked at me? And he was like, no, I didn't know you were the brother. For whatever reason, we connected in some weird way that we both found there was awkward energy. Again, it comes back to that energy, right? Mm-hmm. And it turned out that we had that connection. That's what was going on. So now they fill me in on what happened, and it turns out that after school, my sister had went to her boyfriend's house, and she was shot by him with the very gun that I held only a few months prior in my hand, with the very gun that I thought was where real power came from, with the very gun that I thought was cool, with the very people, because it was us against them, that I was going to align myself with. That's the path I was headed down, even though nobody knew it. That's what my environment, that's how I took in that energy. Those are the choices I was making. So it turns out that she left right about 1:00 is when she died. Right about the time that I was getting that voice to call her, to reach out to her, is when she died. I could have called the phone in his house, but I didn't have the number readily available on me either, because it was his house, it was her boyfriend. Had I known what was happening, I probably could have called somebody, you know what I mean, and said, hey, get a hold of her, she's over here, and da-da-da. Now, what I did know a few days prior to that is she told my mom, and I was there for the conversation, that she was, because they would talk and they would go back and forth on advice and relationships and stuff. And she told him that this was her first love, this guy. They were each other's first love. And she was finally ready to move on. She wanted to break up with him. So she told us that she was going to break up with him, but we didn't think anything of it. It was relationships. We're kids. So turns out she went there that day to break up with him, because that conversation was discussed again the night before. She went there that day to break up with him. Right around 1:00 is the time she was shot. The excuse he gave was that he was playing with his gun, or cleaning his gun, something like that. And I think he said cleaning his gun, and that it went off accidentally and shot her. First off, that dude did not clean his gun. Second, I've seen him handle it. I've also seen him angry. I've also seen him lose his temper. He was like a kid. He didn't have any control of his temper either. He was young too. He was younger. He was only, I think 17 at the time. They tried him as an adult because he was going on 18. So his excuse was cleaning, playing, whatever, right? The lab reports and all that other stuff came back, right? She had been shot at point blank range through the eye. I'm a gun enthusiast. I clean guns. I have experience with guns. There's no situation where you clean a gun that close to someone's eye. Point blank range. There was gunpowder, gun soot the GSR residue on her eye from how close range it was. And it wasn't a little bit, it was a lot. And I know that because thankfully my uncle was around to go identify the body. Had my uncle not been there, the only other person who was even in a mindset to identify the body was me. It literally came down to the two of us, and the cop was asking because the cop didn't really want me to go, but we were the only two that were sane enough in that moment to make that call to identify the body. So my uncle went, and he had to see that with his niece. But I would see it later when we went to court for this hearing, and the genius DA that was in front of us was just flashing the pictures. And we all got to see exactly what it looked like. So my last image of my sister was with that gunshot through her eye. Then, what is his name? Then I turn on the news to see that this kid was turning himself in because he had been getting hunted. He was hunted. People were looking for him because, that time, what was going on. And they had found him, and he was close. He was close to being in danger. So he turned himself into protective custody. And the way they went about it was he went through his connections, his street connections, and managed to get the lawyer that represented Al Sharpton. Not only did he get the lawyer, but I turn on the news and you see Al Sharpton up there on the news spinning this story into some tragic romance thing. He tried to say something. It had something to do with race. He turned into something with race. A Hispanic girl and a black kid from the streets, both of them in love, and he turned into something with race, and how they're trying to make that kid look bad. That it was an accident. That he was trying to make him look bad. Now, this is where I started to understand how corruption works in the streets. This is where I started to understand how far it can reach down to someone who has the name Reverend in front of him. And this is where I started to understand that the media does not report things as they are, but as is beneficial to the media. I didn't know any of that. This is before fake news was a term. This is way back. And this is my eye-opener to the world and what's really been happening and what I almost became a part of. So my anger, this was when I was finally saying enough. This is when I was finally trying to do the right thing, but then I was still getting pulled in the wrong way. And all of a sudden this happens, and my anger just, I gave in. I gave in full force. And on the surface, I was doing everything right. And it wasn't because I was trying to pretend. It was because I was trying to live for my sister's memory.